Welcome to Fill the Void podcast, where we discuss unhealthy human habits caused by the society of consumption. Welcome to Fill the Void podcast. Today's guest is Colleen Kachmann. How are you, Colleen?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Roberta.
No, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you. My first question to you is, what's your story and how did you end up being a coach and all the work that you do regarding alcohol consumption?
Okay. Well, I came by my current coaching role and love and the business that I run. How did I become an expert in recovering from alcohol use disorder?
Yes.
I had a raging case of it. I was a daily drinker for almost 30 years and moved in and out of that being a problem. For the most part, I never thought of alcohol as a problem. I loved drinking. I loved
Yeah.
it. And I thought I was living the good life. What I didn't know about alcohol is, and I'm happy to talk about that, but alcohol is a drug. It's addictive. And there are so many misconceptions out there about the difference between a normal drinker and an alcoholic and what is responsible drinking, that I simply honestly came by alcohol use disorder, which is an alcohol addiction,
Yeah.
very innocently. I had no idea what was happening in my brain and how the habit of using alcohol to reduce my stress was changing my relationship with myself and my relationship with stress. I now see any addictive substance
Yeah.
as very similar to the algorithm, where the more you watch the dog video, the more dog videos you see. So the more you
Exactly.
use alcohol to reduce your stress, the more your brain's like, well, hey, this situation kind of sucks. Would you like a drink? And this is a very subconscious process because the brain is always habituating our problem solving. So I came about it very, very innocently. I simply was unaware that daily drinking was reducing my ability to cope. It was dysregulating my nervous system. What I didn't know, high levels of cortisol, low levels of dopamine. And I was just on this hamster wheel where the only thing that made me feel better was alcohol. Alcohol was the problem and the solution. And I got
Yeah.
into that. And so how did I become a coach? I was a coach even when I was still drinking. I used to help with plant-based diets, fermented foods. I was nutrition-based. And I'd like to stop and say that I have a master's degree. And yet, even with all that education, I had no idea that I was drinking a toxic poison every day. And I don't mean to demonize alcohol because alcohol is like anything else. We interact with addictive substances all the
Yeah.
time in our environment, our phones, sugar,
All the
nicotine.
ways we fill the void. All the ways we fill the void.
Right. We do all of it and we're able to move in and out without getting stuck in this cycle. So I was a coach, and when I decided to quit drinking, I needed a pretty healthy period of detox. My dopamine levels were really low. My nervous system was dysregulated. My thought processes were all turned inside out. My motivation was based on shame, not joy. And so I had a lot of work to do. And in the process of doing that work, because I was already a coach, I went back to school after I got my master's and studied addiction and recovery. Ooh, let me turn on focus. Studied addiction and recovery, and then just really found my passion and purpose because so many people are stuck, especially women post COVID, all the stress.
Yeah.
We normalized drinking at home, where prior to COVID, you could be a social drinker, but nobody really drinks at home.
Yeah.
And they changed the rules, and many women, millions of women, just, slippery slope, one drink at a time, one day at a time, have ended up with alcohol use disorder, which simply means you're drinking more than you want to drink. That's all it means.
Exactly. And also the problem with alcohol is like it's silent what happens. It's like a silent addiction because as it's legal, everyone does it and it's normal. That's the problem. So silently it goes affecting your brain and nobody realizes. That's crazy.
For sure.
So how do you work with your clients, and how can you detect or differentiate when the alcohol use is a problem or not?
So, alcohol use disorder at its core is not a drinking problem, it's a thinking problem. So, just what you asked me right there, how do you know? Alcohol stops being a problem the moment you're wondering if it's a problem and questioning your own judgment.
Yeah,
That is what addiction does is it gets you in your head because now you're making rules about how much you should be drinking or you shouldn't be drinking. And the disconnect, the void is it widens between your experience of yourself, of your habits, of your life, and your thoughts about how you should be or what's normal. That the disconnect is there. So a void forms. Okay. So how do I work with people? Most people who realize they're drinking too much and it gets bad enough that they're willing to do something about it were motivated for two reasons: to avoid pain or pursue pleasure. So
yeah,
they're in enough pain that they want to avoid that. What normally happens, same thing I did, is we think there's only one solution, and that's to stop drinking forever. And that's why so many of us resist that, because we don't want to identify as alcoholics. We don't want a sponsor. We don't want to have to go, make lists of everybody we need to apologize and then go apologize to people who have drinks in their hands. Like, why the hell do I have to apologize? Like, this is so
yeah,
backwards. And so that's the first misconception that I correct, is that no, 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 no. You can do and be whatever you want. I am now a normal drinker. I don't think about it. I don't count. I don't pace myself. I just like, kind of like birthday cake or anything else. You want a less is more attitude, but it's very possible to engage with alcohol without all of this thinking stuff. So I help people realize there's a third option. The first two are struggle and hide and shame and silence and continue to overdrink and just try to willpower your way through that. The
yeah,
second option is to declare yourself an alcoholic and never drink again and pursue sobriety.
yeah,
The third option is to pursue mental health and happiness, because happy people don't drink themselves into a stupor. And if you go upstream, alcohol use, overuse, is a symptom of a thinking problem. So if you're willing to do the work, change your mindset, most importantly, change your relationship with yourself and your body, fill that void, then you don't ever have to worry about alcohol again, and you can apply this skill to anything else in your life that becomes a problem, because we're human. If it's not one
yeah,
thing, it's going to be another. We're always
yes,
working through something.
yeah, exactly. And how do you fight? What's your technique to fight the urges or the thoughts, the intruder thoughts that come and when you're stressed? So I want to have a drink, or
Mhm.
oh, I
Mhm.
want to smoke.
I
That
have 6 essential elements that all must be present. Another mistake a lot of people make is to think taking a break from alcohol to reset their tolerance, then they can go back to drinking. And that is one of the 6 elements, but it is, if you take a break from alcohol and you feel so much better, but you don't change your beliefs about alcohol, then no matter how long you're sober, when you pour alcohol on those old beliefs, eventually you're going to slide right back into those old thought patterns. So how do I teach people? I have a 6 element process and I lay it out A through G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So I'll just explain that really quickly. A is an awareness in the moment that it's not alcohol that's causing, or your desire to drink. You don't want to drink. You want to feel better. So an
yeah,
awareness that you are struggling with thoughts and feelings, and this is an internal thing to shift your focus out of the story in your head and move into B, the body. So you're having a stress response. You're not craving alcohol, you're craving dopamine. You have
yeah,
high levels of cortisol. Learning to parent your body like you're babysitting a 2-year-old. If you're agitated, then maybe you need to calm and soothe yourself. If you're depressed, maybe you need to move and stimulation. If it's just the opposite. The
Yeah.
problem solving skills are very 2-year-old level. So you deal with your
Yeah.
body in the moment. What does my body need right now? It's usually the opposite of what you want to do. Like that's the cheat
Yeah.
code. What do you want to do? Okay, do the opposite.
Yeah.
Then C is learning how to coach yourself so that you can change the narrative, zoom out to the bigger picture, what's happening. The solution to every problem is to ask a different question. So, why
Exactly.
do I want to have a drink? Wrong question. What do I need in this moment to soothe my nervous system? Much better. The awareness that, oh, I'm just having a stress response. I need to complete the stress cycle, and then I can decide if I want to have a drink, but I'm not going to pour alcohol in my stress. Then I teach D, which is dopamine regulation, because dopamine, it's not just brain chemistry, it's also the story in your head. That's why not
Yeah.
everybody gets a runner's high when you go running. And so you
Yes.
have to learn how to wire your dopamine response to doing the hard thing on the front end. What happens here? How do we get here? Booze and bad decisions. We end up with the instant gratification, and we're exchanging long-term satisfaction for instant gratification. So you
Yeah.
have to understand how dopamine works so that you can actually get pleasure from doing the hard thing. And you can rewire your brain with 10-second, 30-second things. And then how do you crawl out of that hole of I want to drink and I need it right now? 10 seconds at a time. Do this, do this. You feel a little bit better. You don't go from a 10 intensity craving to a 0. You go from a 10 to a 9. That gives you a little more bandwidth. Then you do something else at 9 to an 8, and you just realize you're in a process, not an all or nothing thing. I also teach emotional sobriety. That's the E. What is emotional sobriety? It is the ability to realize that you've been intoxicated by your own bullshit. The story in your head is constantly
Exactly.
changing. Your emotions are constantly changing, just like the weather. And to be able to realize it's not what you're telling yourself isn't true. And nothing you tell yourself is true. So let's tell yourself something that is better. So I teach emotional sobriety. And then, really important, is to move or recognize so that you can move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. The fixed mindset is I am the way I am. This is the way it is. It's never going to change. And a growth mindset is okay, I just need more experience, support, guidance. When you fail, it becomes a learning lesson instead of proof that you can't do it anyway. So, those are the elements that I teach.
So so interesting. I love this. And what I love about this is that you can replicate into whatever area of your life and whatever habit, these things that you just mentioned. It's incredible. And yeah, how important it is to be aware of our thoughts in our head, because the problem, I feel, it's more of like we don't have the tools to solve the problem that is us being stressed or feeling pain. We don't have any tools. That's why we fall into these things that are unhealthy and basically puts us in a deeper hole.
Yeah. And the reason that is as children, human beings, human children living in culture, we are taught to manage our behavior. We are
Mm.
never taught how to manage our mind. And the truth is, you are either managing your mind or being managed by your subconscious mind. And our
Exactly.
subconscious is just everything we've ever been exposed to and ever thought. We were told who we are, what our name is, what's expected of us, what is good and bad and right and wrong. And we learn to adjust our behavior and ignore our emotional experience. And so, getting some training in what I call emotional sobriety, you call filling the void, like whatever, but
Yes.
learning that your brain is a tool. There's 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes before bed where you've got a window, the subconscious, and you can program stuff in. This isn't rocket science. It's just most people don't understand that their brain's a tool. It works a certain way. You can do something, repeat it, and create a new habit. And you can do these things on purpose. You can actually choose how you see yourself. You can choose what you think. You can decide, how do I want to feel, and reverse engineer that. So if I want to feel calm, what would I need to be thinking
Yeah.
to feel calm? And then what would I need to do to support that thought? And it's just rinse and repeat, but realizing you have the power to program your own mind. And if you're not using that power, then you're just running on a program you inherited and did not choose, and probably isn't giving you joy and allowing you to live your best life.
Yeah, completely. I love how the words that you utilize to describe all these things. I see it so clear when I hear you speak about this. But like when I think about it, I don't see it as clear. And can you elaborate on what you said? Like we have 30 minutes before bed and 30 minutes when we wake up to manage our subconscious or put in whatever we think. What can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's not that you can't do subconscious work throughout the day. Everything I do constantly, I've trained myself to, go into what is it that I'm thinking that's creating the feeling I'm experiencing. However, exponentially, because of the state of your brain waves in the morning and before bed, you are, I don't like the word vulnerable because that means that could be weak, but you are more susceptible to easier changes in subconscious where you're able to adopt new beliefs and change old ones. It's easier to do that in the morning and the evening. And it makes sense because during the day, we're not focused.
Yeah.
We're distracted and we're busy and we're going through the habit. And whenever, like, think about driving your car to a place you always go. You get there, you don't even remember the drive. Who drove
Mm-hmm.
you? Your subconscious drove you. So, in the morning and right before bed is the time when you have the best opportunity to consciously decide what it is that you want to think, and then take what's the easiest way to change your mind is exposing yourself to the ideas that you want. That's why we adopt mantras and say affirmations. I love to listen to my favorite motivational podcasts or brain training videos in the morning or at night, so I don't have to try that hard. Like, your brain will change. The more you're exposed to an idea, the truer it feels. So you can automate some of this just by intelligently choosing what you're paying attention to. Like, think most people get up in the morning and they jump on their phone, which means
Yeah.
someone else is choosing what it is that you're thinking and feeling. Or they turn on the TV and let, again, somebody else choose. Like, harnessing your choice to choose what you feed your brain with. Most people don't realize that just like food, you are what you eat. You are what you think. And what you consume in terms of content is creating your thought processes. So, realizing when you're consuming and choosing a good diet for your brain is the most powerful and fast way to change your brain. Stop listening to trash, crap, and then
Yeah.
bitching because you don't feel good or you feel disconnected or you feel like the world is ending. No, no, no. Just the person you were listening to is telling you that. Look around your environment. There's lots of things to connect with and reasons to get up in the morning and purpose and meaning and ways to contribute. And then you start creating your purpose. You can't consume and create at the same time. Creating is what gives us joy. And so you got to turn off the incoming flux of brain shit that's just being crammed down your throat so that you can choose what you put in there to consume. And then there's equal time where then you're taking the ideas that you're exposing yourself to and creating experiences for yourself that further integrate those into the subconscious.
Yeah, completely. And I feel also that in the society that we live, it's even more difficult to live because we have to be more concentrated in seeing what's coming into our bodies and our brains instead of relaxing and just living. Well, that's how I live. I feel every day. Like, as I have a very addictive personality, I go through my life and I'm like cautious,
Yeah.
instead of being able to be free.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I would work with you on that too, because the thought, I have an addictive personality,
Yeah,
it's just a thought. And you believe it's true. And then you start
yeah.
looking for evidence that it's true. And then it becomes a reinforcing, self fulfilling prophecy. I used to have an addictive personality. I now
Exactly.
identify myself as a less is more person. I'm a less is more, like less of everything is more. And I evolved that over time. But one of the fastest ways to change, to fill your void, is to go directly into your identity. Because trying to change your behavior, like if you imagine a pyramid, behaviors at the top, that's like the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, what you're doing. Below
Yeah,
that is what you're feeling. Below that is what you're thinking. Below that is what you believe. Below that is your identity. If
exactly.
you don't do or think or feel anything that doesn't align with your identity. So I no longer identify as somebody with a personality or an addictive personality. So I don't struggle like the my default thinking is, oh, I'll just have like a bite and then I'm good. Like I don't want that. Whereas
Exactly.
if your thought is, ooh, I can't stop, or I always want more. Why do I always want more? You're focusing on that, you're creating that. So moving
Exactly.
into the identity level and identifying yourself as free, a person who chooses your own focus, a person who is less is more and who respects and loves your body. Like that is when I work with people, that's actually the biggest quantum leap you can get is to change the way you identify and start leaning into that.
Exactly. Because you're not used to identifying yourself to that other thing, which is you in reality. And by repeating the old narrative, you just create that. That's so
Yeah.
clear.
We
That's
believe
clear.
what we think, we believe what we say. So, exposing yourselves to new things makes you think new things. And then having people like you and I right now having an intelligent conversation about all of this also up levels our beliefs. So, you just have to be really aware of what it is you're thinking and what it is you're saying and say, do I want that to be true? Because nothing you think is true. Like all thoughts are, they're not even real. And so you have to choose, do I want this to be true? And if not, what truth do I want to lean into? And realize the truth is always changing. Yesterday's for sure
Yeah.
truth is tomorrow's bullshit. But we get attached to these ideas that work for a little bit, and then we ignore the fact they're not working anymore. And that's how we get stuck in the past and get addicted to things because we're trying to soothe this disconnect between reality and what we think it should be.
And it's also true that we also attached to these beliefs or narratives because it makes us feel safe in a way.
Yeah,
Why we humans, it doesn't give us safety to change and evolve rapidly.
right.
I was asking you, like, why does it happen that we want to attach and we don't feel safe by changing? Because in reality, yeah, tomorrow we are another person.
It's
That's
a
true.
frustratingly simple answer. Because the brain's job is to automate processes so that, in theory, you have room to focus on other things. It automates your drive to work so that you can be thinking about what you're going to do when you get to work, more done, right? And
Yeah,
so, because the brain likes to conserve resources, the activation energy to respond differently, you have to expend energy. You have to set the intention. You have to be willing to burst through a little bit of pain, you know, but most of our pain is not as bad as a paper cut. So
yeah,
the brain prefers familiarity. Even if that familiarity is painful, it likes certainty. It's better to dance with the devil you know than the devil you
yeah,
don't know. So learning to tolerate uncertainty, which if you really think about it, nobody knows what's going to happen 5 minutes from now.
yeah,
Certainty is a feeling, not a fact. And so if you have to be able to tolerate the reality that you know absolutely nothing about what's going to happen 1 minute from now,
yeah,
and then be able to tolerate the not knowing. I like to say you need to make friends with that sensation when I talked about dopamine
Yeah.
wiring, learn to lean in and enjoy that sensation, because the sensation of uncertainty actually leads you to create new things instead of living in the same
Yeah.
verbal vomit you do. So
Yeah.
you have to learn to be able to tolerate uncertainty. And all you have to really do is understand everything's uncertain. And so the answer is the brain doesn't like change, and you have to manually override, like a stick shift or
Yes.
something that you're driving. You have to manually override your default pattern. That takes energy and focus, and most people aren't willing to apply the energy and focus, and so they live lives that are just knee-jerk reactions to whatever's going on around them, and wonder why they're not happy.
Exactly. And what do you see? I want to know what you say about like women and men and what's the difference. I don't know if in alcohol use or behaviors, like what do you evaluate in women, as you were talking before, and the difference with men regarding these topics?
So I'm going to answer that kind of just from the women's side. Like I
Yes.
don't
Okay.
I work with women. I could speculate, but here's what I experience with women. Most women that I work with are, how do we get into this? We are people pleasers. We are perfectionists. And what we don't realize is that we're actually trying to control the world because we
Yeah.
want to regulate our own uncertainty or our own emotions. And so we are more concerned with what we look like than how we feel. So we think when we drink too much, we're getting away with it, not realizing we're persons walking around with a hangover. So with women, the biggest obstacle I see is that they have to change their relationship with their own body and start prioritizing their needs as though, wait for it, they are 100% worthy of having normal human needs. Women have to
Yeah.
learn that their needs are not negotiable. And the easy button as a mother and as a wife was to take care of everybody else, because at least then there would be a little bit less bitching, and ignore myself. And
Yeah.
so I don't work with men. I would imagine that's gender specific, because women are conditioned to be nurturers, people pleasers, caregivers, to ask permission and agreement. Like I can't set a boundary unless I take a vote and everybody approves that I'm going to take a 1 hour break. Like we're just conditioned to seek approval and agreement from our tribe, and to pay attention to a lot of different things at once,
Yeah.
which as women who monitored the cave while the men were out focused on getting the hunt, women had to pay attention to a lot of things. So, there's some genetic hardwiring and instinct, cultural conditioning, but all of that conditioning has to be overcome so that you change your relationship with yourself, that, wait for it, you are just as important as all the other people in your life. Like as women, as a mother, I wouldn't have really believed that. Like, nah, I have 4 kids and 3 stepkids and a husband, and I have to take care of all of them before I take care of myself. And my favorite analogy is the airplane analogy.
Yeah.
What do they say? You got to put your own oxygen mask on. But as women,
Yeah.
we don't believe that, because we do it and it works to
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice our own needs until it doesn't work. And we wake up drunk at 50 going, oh no, oh, I have a drinking problem.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And also about what you were saying about accepting, women have many issues, and I talk about myself too, about body image and a certain way that we have to look for men as well,
Hmm. Yeah, we're
right?
just programmed for that. And that is where I teach women, you have to start living from the inside out. How do I feel right now instead of how I look? I am 50 years old. I have trained my brain, when I look in the mirror, I no longer allow myself to think things like, you look so old, your best days are behind you. Like, I don't talk to Colleen that way anymore. I'm like, girl, you look amazing, and to realize that it's not the lines on my face that are causing me to feel bad about myself. It's my internal narrative. It's that this nasty mean girl in my head that's calling me old and worrying that men are going to think I look old. Like that's all happening in your head. That's this, like I started in the beginning, this is a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. And that applies to your self narrative also. Like you just are this beautiful person who you are in this moment. It doesn't matter what you weigh. It doesn't matter, what your hair looks like. It doesn't matter. What matters is the relationship you form with this human body that you're going to be with from birth until death. And you can either talk nice to her, or you can kick her when she's down and wonder why she wants to drink or smoke or eat and, stuff her face
Really.
or numb out in front of Netflix. And the truth is, we're trying to escape our own body, our own minds. You can't escape your own mind. You live here. Like, this is where you are. So, teaching women that you can change the relationship with yourself, that's also a skill. And then the more you
Yeah.
love yourself, the more your external does manifest beauty and movement, but you can't be doing it because you want to look better for somebody else, because you're not going to be happy when that happens either, because the bar's always moving on how you should look. Last year's clothes are outdated. Last year, like you're never gonna get there. And P.S., we're all getting older. So it's kind of a downhill slide if you're measuring with external metrics. I measure with happiness and peace
Really.
in my body. And then I do things. And then all of the external stuff just kind of takes care of itself.
You mentioned before the affirmations. It's
Mhm.
something that I always read it on social media, for example, but I don't know why I can't resonate like about saying an affirmation. Maybe I don't even feel it, but saying it doesn't even feel good.
Yeah.
What's the way to do it?
This is how I teach it. The affirmation isn't going to work if you don't think it's true. So, zooming out with your relationship with truth to realize none of it's true, all of it's true. I think of like a piano. All of the keys are present on the board. You are a good person and a bad person. You are a bitch. You are a lover. You're a child. You're a mother. All the things are true. So, what happens is people, it's called toxic positivity. If I just repeat this
Yeah.
positive affirmation, it'll be true. Yes, but that's only half of it. You also have to admit that you also don't think it's true. Bringing all of your truth up into consciousness and allowing the whole messy, conflicting things that allows you to choose which truth you act into. But pretending that you don't have this, that feeling is telling you you suck. And
Yeah.
pretending that that's not true. No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. Like embracing it. What is the difference between acknowledging your feeling and actually processing it? You can't just acknowledge it and wallow in it. Oh, I do suck. Oh, I am fat. Oh, I'm never going to get there. No, you have to realize that none of your truths are true. And it's only the behaviors and the thoughts that you repeat that perpetuate you forward. So I think affirmations are awesome, but they're only half of it. You have to acknowledge the dark side and allow that to be as one of the many truths, and you're just not going to act on it. So it's a little complicated, but that's like shadow work, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. I see it clearly. I think it's very logic.
to
Exactly.
accept the part of you that hates herself.
Exactly.
I
It's
love myself
acceptance.
and I hate myself. Like that, what if both of those things can be true?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with you. Nothing has gone wrong. That is not a problem. That thought is not a problem. It's just an old habit that you do in response to a feeling or whatever. Like it's okay to
Exactly.
say I hate myself, and like I use tapping or energetic work. It's like, I just thought I hate myself. Like you can take the charge out of it so that it's just one of the thoughts that pop into your head. We have a lot of thoughts that pop into our
Yeah.
head that don't mean anything. Like I want to knife you in the face right now, or I want to light your shit on fire. Like we don't over emphasize those thoughts. So to realize, oh, you had a thought, I hate myself. I felt bad for a moment. Allowing that without judgment to just be the human experience you had for 10 seconds and then move on and don't attach to it as though it's true. Then you can use the affirmations.
Yeah. I love this. I love how you explain it. And so, Colleen, my last question to you is more of like, how do you see my generation growing up in the society that we live with all the things that we talked about? And what's your view of the world that we're heading with technology and everything that's happening?
So I don't know how old you are, but my oldest is 26. So I am definitely
29.
okay. So
I'm
I
29.
am I am old enough to be your mother. Here's what I believe. My kids, your generation has to wake up to conscious choice. Your focus has been stolen. Johann Hari has a book called Stolen Focus. I highly recommend it. It's not just a
Yeah.
bag of unfortunate truth, it's also very inspirational. But the truth is, you will live in the world you create. And your world, it's much harder to have community. It's much
Mm.
harder because we're all online, we're digitally disconnected emotionally. And so realizing that you have a choice, what you put in your brain and the story you tell yourself is how you create the world. And there is a whole generation of people who are opting out of the old narrative. Do not believe anything my generation tells you about the world, the economy, pollution. Like, stop paying attention to the end of the world shit, because I do believe the only ways humans are going to survive is an evolution of consciousness
Yeah.
where you don't you ask a different question. You can't solve a problem from the mindset that sees the problem. You have to go upstream and you have to save yourself first. Your mental health is the only way to save the planet.
Yeah.
People your age don't get that. They're like, well, there's plastic islands, there's nuclear waste, there's toxic food, there's glyphosate in all the corn. Like, we're
Yeah.
screwed. That narrative will play out, or you can opt out of it and create a new reality that begins with your own mental health. And you got to protect that like a ferocious mama bear.
Yeah.
Don't put shitty thoughts in your brain. That what you think is more important than what you eat. I've I've gone through so many beliefs from the 80s where nobody ate any fat and I'm just eating
Yeah.
fat-free sour cream and putting toxins in my body, but I believed that work. Like, your beliefs, your mental health, your connection. And the other thing, as I've raised children, the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Horrible question.
Terrible.
I think if you are struggling and you're listening to this, you are struggling with what's my purpose in life. Your purpose is to live your best life. Just start with that. Be selfish, live your best life, because under the umbrella of you living your best life will be how you change the world. But you can't change the world from a sick story in your head. You're only as healthy as your stories. Think of the story you're telling yourself like tea. The longer you steep in it, the stronger it gets. You have to choose the tea bag that you want to steep in. And that, like, I think all of the things they teach in school, none of it fucking matters. We should be
Yeah.
teaching mental health,
I think
physical
the
well
same.
being. That's it. Because physically and mentally happy people go do big things. Like, in this digital age, you can get a degree in about anything in an hour with a good Google search.
Yeah.
Your problem in life is not a lack of skills or a lack of degrees. It's a lack of understanding of how your mind works and how to align and how to process your feelings and uh,
Exactly.
and evolve. That's
And
my big
it's
50-year-old advice.
I love your advice. So good. Thank you so much for sharing this. And I think it's so clear what we need and what schools have to teach, but like nobody does it. I don't understand. I always say this. It's crazy. Thank you
It
so
is.
much, Colleen. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for all these incredible insights. It was amazing speaking to you.
Thanks for having me.